report and say thanks for being a part of the meeting, and turn it directly over to Stephanie and Andy for process update and for office hours. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lee. Glad you're here, everyone. Just to give you a quick update on where we are. As you can see, we're continuing to get a couple of the extra MOUs that state agencies have been working through their projects before they signed. And we're continuing to disperse funds as those requests come in. Most people are set up for Pangram. Many of you know we have a report to the legislature on a quarterly basis for the SFRF funds. And then we also have this upcoming Treasury report, which I know many of you are working on. So we mostly wanted to hold office hours today and answer any questions you have about the reporting information that you need to turn in and any other questions you may have. So I'll turn it over to Andy, and we welcome your questions. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not a ton to add. Really just want to create space and time to work through any questions that you all may have as we get into the deadline for the SFRF reporting tomorrow. We also have the grants team on. I don't know that we've all been together and with time set aside to also answer questions about any SOPs or monitoring that guidance that's come out. So we are here and available for questions on any of that. And so we'll just moderate the conversation, I guess, or answer questions as you all have them. And y'all can feel free to put questions in the chat, raise your hand like Jackie just did, perfectly on time for that segue, and or feel free to take yourself off mute and jump in. But yeah, Jackie, go ahead.
Can we ask questions about reporting and or monitoring? Or do you prefer? Okay. I do have one question about reporting, and I was actually going to send you an email earlier today, but I'll just go ahead and ask since I never got to it. If you remember yesterday, I had sent an email about putting a negative number in the spreadsheet, and currently the spreadsheet does not allow you to put a negative. Would make it where you could do so. I started thinking about it afterwards, and since we're supposed to keep updating this same version monthly, what will happen with a new version when it comes out? Or are we expected to copy from the old version to the new version, or exactly how would that work?
That's a very good question. Since this is a new issue amid all the frenzy of getting this, it's not our first SFRF quarterly report, but it's the first of this scale with the full reporting system in place. So the short answer is I don't know yet. I think the longer answer is we will make it as easy on you all as possible when we do that. So I think for now, most likely what I would expect that we would do is probably take, again, this is not a promise, but just thinking off the top of my head about what may be most sort of straight path here would be for us on our end to update any of the data validation that exists in the columns based on your July reports and submit those copies back to you all. And of course, with revenue, Department of Revenue will be compiling based on what you all had submitted us for the April report as well, but that's unique to you all. So we'll get back to you on that, understanding that the next report from you all will be due just a month from now. So we will not dilly-dally, but we'll work through on our end technically what's going to be the quickest fix and easiest to roll out with you all, so there isn't a ton of copy and pasting happening.
Great, thank you. For my other questions, I may just put them into chat because it may be better for you to think about them before you answer, or that way I'm just not reading a bunch of stuff till you have it in an email. So I'll let you answer them as you read them and get to them.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, I see in the chat question from Heather for Friday's deadline. Do we need to submit reports for projects that have not had any activity yet? No. So for this month, you only need to send us reports for projects that have activities. But starting in August, we'll want to see reports for all projects. But for this month, so we can narrow kind of the scope of what everyone's working on with this first go at it, we are just requiring projects that have activities. Just keep in mind that activities include obligating funds. So even if you do not have expenditures, if you have committed funding to another entity, that would be a qualifying activity that would need to be reported. Felicia.
Hello, everyone. This is Felicia. I'm with AOC. And one of the SFRF projects that we have funding for covers court overtime costs that we've incurred. So we've been tracking these costs for a long time, but we went back and we reclassed to our SFRF cost center all the costs from July forward. So in this quarter, in our accounting system, we have the entire year's costs, July through March reclass, and then April, May, and June costs. And in the guidelines, we were told to reach out to the reporting team to find out how to report costs that were incurred prior to this quarter. So how do I report those costs? I do have them separated. They're separated in our records, but I need to know how to report them in Pangram.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say go ahead. You can report all of those, all the expenditures in this current report. Use the form as is. You can still identify all the costs effectively as the June reporting period, so you don't have to go back month by month. Just be sure that the underlying records that you all have do divide it up sufficiently. This would all be, well, so this would any personnel costs and all that would classify as personnel costs, I presume, that would be reported directly into Pangram. So you just provide the whole dollar amount. Whatever you have not previously reported to NCPRO, report that full dollar amount in Pangram. And again, just make sure that your records will support all of that. So it'll be, when we report to U.S. Treasury, we'll report all of that together for this reporting period. And it'll effectively be a kind of retroactive adjustment for what was previously reported, which was 0 for it. So I think that should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, I have a question from Hazel.
Yes, hello. Quick question. Wanted to know about getting access as a user. How long typically does that take?
I will refer your question over to Youngjin, who I believe is on. Oh, maybe Youngjin isn't on. So the quick answer, and any of my colleagues can jump in and correct me on this, I believe it's ordinarily supposed to just take, I think, like 2 to 3 or 1 to 3 business days. It's pretty quick. I do understand that there is a little bit of a backlog, not specifically related to Pangram, but sort of the larger workflow that the SAP team for the DOT product has. So I don't know, Hank, I see that you're on. If you have any further insight into that?
No, I concur with Andy's opinion. I think the the department of the information technology, they will process your entry very quickly. They will create your account, and then you can just try to log in with your credential.
Okay, thank you.
And Adam, I saw a note from you. Did you have more wisdom to provide than I have to offer?
Don't know about wisdom. We'll just say, yeah, my experience with private colleges and universities in the process, the NCID, which most folks on here may not be concerned with, that's immediate because it's automated. The EBS step requires humans. So that can be 1 business day, 1 to 3, or there have been a couple cases where it's taken longer. But I would say in my experience, an average of same day to 1 to 3 business days.
I would say if no one at your agency has access currently and you're having an issue getting the report in, please just communicate with your grants manager and we'll work with you as needed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, coming back into, okay, so you have a few monitoring questions. Jackie, we'll come back around to the monitoring questions. All right, Steve, 2 subsequent reporting questions. One subrecipient says that they are registered in SAM.gov, but they're unable to find, but you all are unable to find it in a search. Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I think that's going to be a judgment call for you all managing your subrecipients. If they, yeah, I'm just thinking that I know that the system is there are challenges with this move over to UEI as well, and I think there have been challenges with finding folks. So I think you all make the best judgment that you can on what would be sufficient for that. I don't know if there's going to be a hard and fast rule on this. Obviously, if they've provided some level of evidence, you know, and you feel that's sufficient, I think that you know, I'd be fine with that. Then another subrecipient had their SAM.gov registration expire. That's interesting. I think is it sufficient that they're considered registered and not needing additional information to be registered? I don't know about that one. We may want to follow up and get back with you on that question and making sure we're complying with it. I think that the safest thing would be to list them as I guess no longer registered and see if their previous year's gross revenue exceeds the thresholds for having to do any of that compensation reporting. Sorry, that's not super helpful, Steve, but we'll look into it. I'll ask Mikey and Natalie to make a note so we can come back to that. Okay, question from Heather. What if I need to redo a report? I noticed some errors on one of the reports I submitted. Heather, are you referring specifically to a report you've already submitted to us for this period, or thinking about next month needing to go back and correct items?
No, I noticed that I left some things off of some payments, and I noticed that when I accidentally put in the reference number in the 10 field, so I messed up a couple things on it. So I completely redid it. So I need to redo it basically.
Young Jen, do you are folks able to resubmit before we process all the data on our side?
Yeah, Heather, we can return those report back to you and then you can continue work those report.
Who do you want me to email to send it back?
And Heather and who else in our team? Ini? You can send to us. We'll make sure to return
Okay.
those expense report to you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem, no problem. That's
Great question from Sarah. Does your detailed subaward report for entities getting more than $50,000 get returned for errors if the subrecipient has a TIN and not a UEI, or the UEI is not found? So that's an interesting question. I don't know that anything from, certainly nothing on our end would trigger an error. I do not know, and I wouldn't expect that Treasury's portal automatically runs UEI, runs a UEI check when we do our upload, but we can.
I was just
we can look into the
curious if
business
you ever
rules on
get,
that, but
like,
yeah.
I was just curious if you get some kind of an exception report from them that you would be sharing with us.
Certainly, if we run into issues uploading any information, we will. You will not find us to be shy with reaching out. But yeah, I'm not sure that there's an automatic run through the system that way, and that may come up later on. But I'm not sure. The only time, at least this last quarter, that we had reports get spat out back at us was if the formatting for the UEI or TIN was incorrect, but not. But yeah, I don't know that they verify the accuracy, I guess, of each of those numbers. Let's see. Hazel, did you have another question? So your hand is up. Or we can see Heather also has, you have your hand up if you want to jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. This is just a follow-up to the first question I had earlier about when there's no activity. So when you stated we need to just make sure there's no obligation. So for example, Commerce is granting to, I guess they'd be sub-recipients because they are nonprofits listed in the budget bill. Those nonprofits have not had any activity yet. We have not, distributed any money to them or anything like that. So, but they are awarded the amount in the budget bill. Does that equal an obligation at this point or no?
Yeah, I think Treasury would count that as an obligation at this point.
So I would need to do a report on each one of those, even though there's been no activity, and just show no activity on the report.
It would be, Treasury would consider it an activity if an entity has been promised money beyond the prime recipient. So even though there haven't been expenditures, they need to know how much of the funds overall have actually been committed for some purpose.
Okay, so I would just say the amount that the budget bill stated they would get, but then show that zero expenditure of that so far.
That's right, and
Okay.
Yeah, and so in the subaward reporting attachment, you would, and I'll just pull this up so we're all looking at the same thing. So you would, this is the subaward attachment. So for them, you would just, on the subrecipient tab, if they are receiving $50,000 or more, you would provide the information about the subrecipients, so all those nonprofits, and then information about the actual the grants that they'll be receiving. Let me ask, do you all have, I know that they are laid out, they're specified in the bill. Do you all have agreements in place with them?
They've been provided grant agreements to sign, and the majority of them have not returned them signed yet.
Okay, so then maybe I think just for consistency then, I guess my suggestion would be to only report the ones that had signed agreements prior to July 1st. Okay. So you would enter them into here and provide then whatever the performance period is specified in that agreement. And then there's a short description of the purpose of the funds, and then what that entity would be doing to support that purpose. But yeah, Andy, then expenditures, you don't need to report that.
Yeah, Andy, I would agree with that, because that gives the evidence that they have agreed to comply with the administrative code and other things that you would probably consider to be conditions of that award. So that until they've agreed to the conditions of the award, it's a fair call not to report it until they've signed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
This is Jane. I just want to make sure I understood what I just heard. Sorry if this is redundant. So if they have not signed the agreement, we're still completing the subrecipient identifying information tab. We're just not reporting any obligations or expenditures, or we're submitting nothing.
If you do not have an agreement, you would not, if you don't have an agreement with that, future subawardee, you would not report them for this period.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a momentary break from the reporting questions, seeing a bit of a lull in those questions, and we can jump into some of the monitoring questions, which I am hopeful that some of my colleagues on the grants team can help answer here. So a couple questions from Jackie at DOR. Bottom of page 8 begins a section that reads annual reviews. States report should be sent to subrecipient within 1 week of annual review. But then on page 10, it has 90 days for high risk. Please clarify what is required.
This is Benny Aiken. Yeah, we can take a closer look at that, Jackie, and follow up with an answer. But at top of my head, and I don't have the report in front of me as I'm speaking, but I think that is making reference to 2 different types of reviews. Based on your risk assessments, the monitoring handbook talks about doing either accountability calls or annual reviews or desk audits. And I think the timetable that's in there has to do with a different timetable depending on the type of review that's being done. But the bottom line of where that is getting at, though, is that there needs to be timely and sufficient feedback that gets back to your subrecipients. And these are some guidelines that are given. If an agency already has subrecipient monitoring procedures in place that may be, where the procedures may be tighter than what's required in the monitoring handbook, you're certainly welcome to do that. The points being here that we need to ensure that there is follow through on the report or on the activity by the administering agency to get the information out promptly to the subrecipients, and then with the subrecipients in return having some deadline to get back and respond to those findings. Hope that helps. We can certainly get back to the report and give you some more detailed information on that if you need some help with it.
I think that helps.
Okay.
I'll look at it closer too to just make sure. I mean, it wasn't just me that looked at it at DOR. There was a couple of other people as well. Chris, who's on this call, as well as one other person that's assisting with this. And I think we all read it the same. So I'll go back and read it again, just make sure I didn't read it incorrectly, and let you know if I have any additional questions.
Right.
I think the biggest, one of the biggest overreaching question I think we had for the handbook in general, and I think you just said it, is the handbook more of a guide than something that we're responsible for following, as long as we have our own monitoring policy that would be sufficient to cover federal guidelines? I mean, I guess that's one of the things that we really want to make sure of, that we don't have to necessarily do everything that you have in the handbook, as long as we're covering ourselves.
Yeah, I would say that so the handbook is supposed to be a reflection of 2 CFR 200 requirements. If you already have procedures that meet those requirements, agencies that have procedures in place can do that. We would say that, so it is important that we make sure that we meet the spirit of what's in this manual. So you may have some timetables that may be tighter than that are in this manual, or you may want to have the desk audits and annual reviews that have response times that are exactly the same or whatever. We want to make sure that the spirit of the requirement is met and done in a way that's at least at a minimum at the level of what you see in the monitoring handbook. So we want to give some guidelines as to how it's done. Our intent is for that to be in compliance with the federal requirements. But again, if you have procedures, policies that already exist, we're certainly good in working with you on what those are. Okay. And let me just mention also, we do want to get any feedback that you have on any of these operating procedures, handbooks, that we can go back, and the manuals are a work in progress. So you may even anticipate some revisions that may come out as whether it be inconsistencies, or even if there are typos, anything that you see that you have a question on that you want us to take a look at, we can certainly do that and update it if necessary.
I think something along those lines that I have a specific question about, and it's not really in the handbook, but it's in the administrating agency's SOP. It's in, I think, the 4.0 ongoing activities, 4.1 the risk assessment, and basically it talks about once you have a grant agreement in place, that the administering agency, which would be us, would distribute a risk assessment questionnaire to the subrecipient. However, like for DOR, we've already done our risk assessment of our subrecipient, and we've already identified that they're high risk. So, I mean, it makes it seem like in the SOP, this is something that you have to do, but I'm assuming if we've done our own risk assessment in our own way, I mean, there's nothing's going to change by us sending them something for them to complete when we already know that they're high risk based on, and we had a method to our madness. Just put it that way. I won't go into all the details of what we did to determine the risk assessment, but there were several things involved, and made sure that it followed the federal guidelines, obviously, to make sure. So we've already identified what risk level they are, and we do realize that down the line we do need to do another one.
If you've already done your risk assessment and you've documented it, that suffices.
Good. Okay, that's what we wanted to make sure of. That I like what you said about meeting the spirit. So that would pretty much be for all of the SOPs and the handbook. And it's not necessarily, as long as we're doing something similar or that meets the objectives, it's not that we have to do exactly what is in your handbook or in your SOPs.
Right. Yeah, it's not intended to be a step-by-step. It's intended to be a guide.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it was also a question about the sign off.
That's right.
Yeah, the intent there again is that we would highly suggest that there is some sign off from the subrecipients to say that they have received the monitoring handbook, with the intent there being good communication, open communication, fostering a sort of a teamwork environment, so that there is a clear understanding on the expectations. Making it very clear to the subrecipient what we're going to be doing in terms of our monitoring. And some of the things that are in that listing, if I recall correctly, probably are items that are in their MOUs or that will be in your MOUs that require that they provide documents and we have access to records and so forth. But the handbook, if they have, whether it's this specific handbook or if it's your procedures or whatever, we would highly recommend that there's some acknowledgement that is on file that indicates that we have an agreement on what the expectations are.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily, I'm glad you explained the intent there, because I was a little confused, because I'm kind of wary about giving this handbook to our subrecipient because it does have a lot of information in it that may or may not apply to them, right? And then we may just get a lot of questions that really doesn't, I don't want to say matter, but doesn't pertain to them, I guess is the right word. And I do feel we've discussed that our MOU addresses a lot of the concerns. So if we feel like that addresses it, that should be sufficient. Or if we come up with our own document to say, because we have developed, we've tried, I think we're still in the process of making sure it's exactly where it needs to be, but we are developing our own monitoring policy. So I guess if we give them a copy of that and have them acknowledge that they received it or something like that, along with the MOU, we should be covered. Okay.
Yes, that
And
works.
Jackie, I would offer to, if you want us to send you a copy of the subrecipient handbook so that you can take it and edit it and make it your own, that's fine. We're happy to do that. We want it to be something that's useful. And part of the challenge, I think, for all of us with these funds is that the legislature has appropriated so many different programs and so many different uses that it's hard to cover everything that everybody's doing.
All right.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll talk to Chris and Hannah to see if we think, I think we're far enough along in our other one that I don't know if we need that at this point, but I appreciate you offering, but we'll discuss it. And if we think that would be helpful, I'll ask you to send it to us in that version.
Yeah, similar spirit with lots of the forms and the letters and so forth that may be included in that handbook. They're available to be examples or guides that you could use.
And I see Steve asking, can we do that? We can send that out to everybody. We don't mind doing that. We were trying to find a way to do it that we didn't have to put it on our website, because we, NCPRO, have subrecipients that we want to follow it and not to modify the subrecipient handbook. So we might find a way that we can just send it to the state agencies through this email invite list, and do it that way, so we don't have to put it on our website.
That would be great. And then we can pick, and like if we want to pick some of the language of it, maybe if we've already started our own monitoring policy, can kind of take the wording from it and add to ours, or potentially just go from scratch from yours. We'll determine which way.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And just to update Jackie, Hannah and I have been doing that already, is taking what NCPRO sent us and incorporating what we've already started drafting.
Oh, okay. And it might help. I mean, it might be easy in Adobe these days. I don't know, but we're happy to send you the Word document too, in case that's easier.
There is a feature that you can convert PDF to a Word document. So we've kind of been using that. So, but yeah, we've been using your guide to beef up our stuff.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We paid
appreciate it.
people, we paid a consulting firm to help us with this, with the hope that it would help all of us, so.
And
Thank
it
you.
did. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
I think, Benny, there's another question related to the monitoring handbook, which I think we broadly just spoke to, but there are two forms requiring sub-award or sub-recipient and agency signatures. Those are Exhibit B and Attachment 1. Can you clarify the purpose of those documents?
And I think Benny already, that was my question. I think Benny
Yep.
already addressed that, so
Great.
I'm good with that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Question from Jane, is there a specific number we should use for the SFRF award number on the subaward attachment? Yes, the agreement number that's provided in our MOU with you should, for each project, should specify what the award number is for, or it'll be the same number. What the agreement number and the SFRF award number are one and the same. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. All right, I'm scrolling through. I don't think we've missed anything in the chat at this point. Feel free to stick around and ask more questions. If the NCPRO team will stick around for a while longer, but if you've had your question answered, feel free to hop off. If you have other questions, feedback, any topics you'd like to discuss while we're all here together, feel free to continue using this time and jump in with your comments or questions.